Somebody was going to do this eventually, and yes, that somebody was gonna be me, with a taste in games so ugly not even Josh would wear it on a shirt. The order of the day, dear watcher, is to play devil's advocate in a defense case that Johnny Cochran wouldn't touch: the Mass Effect 3 ending trial. If you didn't experience it, you've heard of it. Even after the extended cut was stapled on to appease the angry masses in 2012, some gamers just weren't satisfied. Is it the perfect video game ending ever seen? Maybe not, it does have its problems. But does that make it a complete failure as well as grounds for consumer action? No, as this is rather harsh. Medievally harsh even, you bunch of monsters. True, the majority of complaints are perfectly rational conversation starters, but not arguments for completely ruining the whole trilogy. To really live the gimmick, I'm just gonna come straight out and say that my driving argument is that it's really not that bad. And let's be honest, I've got nothing to lose other than respect here, and I have none of that anyway, so let's get to it. I'm Ash from WhatCulture Gaming, and these are 9 reasons you're wrong about Mass Effect 3's ending. 9. Trilogy Syndrome. Setting aside the specifics of this particular franchise, there is a bit of a history going against any piece of media tasked with closing out a great trilogy. Just ask the X-Men. We start with a first chapter that raises the bar and generates a huge buzz for things to come, and a number 2 that expands on the predecessor to the point of near perfection, evolving the franchise into a classic. And then, oh then, there is an expressly final installment tasked with curbing a massive story into a conclusion, deemed a disappointment for the franchise despite being a top effort by normal standards. Whereas the bookends of the trilogy have constraints and obligations, such as establishing worlds or wrapping up the story, the lovely gooey centerpiece of Mass Effect 2 had the benefit of simply letting the story run wild. It was a superlative experience. But unfortunately, it also set up a tone no follow-up could actually match, at least not one tasked with ending the series. Without even getting into the merits of the game, it is worth pointing out that the bias of high expectations probably helped exacerbate the backlash against the Dark Knight Rises of video games. 8. Unrealistic, aka impossible, expectations for an open-ended conclusion. Of all the reasons people found to hate the endings of Mass Effect 3, the loudest outcry had to be the severe disillusionment over BioWare leaving behind the decision and consequence system that had become the franchise's calling card. After all the touting and trumpeting of the far-reaching impact of countless decisions you made for Shepard, how could it all boil down to 3 canned options that felt unrelated to the path you chose? While it was perfectly normal to dream of a finale tailored to your character's past choices, it would have been an unrealistic task for BioWare to try and program all the story permutations into a decent close. They'd previously done such a nice job of carrying forward player decisions that hopes ended up dashed when they didn't find a way to integrate it all into one last master stroke. Imagine you just spent years painstakingly writing one of the greatest stories ever told, but your editor wouldn't let you release it until you wrote 20 different endings, each of them neatly and satisfyingly wrapping up the preceding magnum opus. Would you A. squeeze their neck until their eyes bulged, or B. oh wait, this isn't a multiple choice question? It's an impossible task, and leads on to the next point. 7. The saga needed a defined ending. Let's imagine for a moment that some sort of fluid, personalised endings were actually possible. What are the odds that even half of them would have lived up to the whole thing from a storytelling perspective? Either the differences between endings would have been superficial with a few added stills or cutscenes to protect the cohesiveness of it all, or BioWare could have made patchwork endings stitching together major elements and prayed it all stuck together like an overstuffed taco when viewed. Bits always fall out. At some point, for the purposes of this whole epic reaching a cohesive and satisfying conclusion, the range of variables needed to taper off as the ending took shape. Yes, it would have been amazing to have a personally tailored story that came from every decision that had ever affected your gameplay. But the series needed a definitive endpoint with slight differences, just like it needed a firm storyline driving all these choices in the first place. A firm ending was the only way to truly encapsulate the franchise. 6. The morality system can't do everything. Some gamers have complained about the 3 given options being too ambiguous from a morality standpoint, which kept them from picking the one that best suited their moral preference. Never mind that the original two, red equals kill, blue equals control, are colour-coded and morally consistent with renegades and paragons, respectively. Others wondered why the game simply didn't play out the right ending on its own. If Shepard had been executing mercs, decking reporters, and strong-arming salespeople for the whole trilogy, why would they want to break character this close to the end? Never mind that forcing an option might have been the only way the original cut could have been even more poorly received. By the end of the game, there really is no more need for the moral ratings to play a role. It's the end of the story, and your Paragon/Renegade status simply wears out its usefulness a few scenes earlier. That doesn't mean the system has been thrown away, it's just hitting the showers after working hard for your game all along. It's always been up to you to make your own choices, and the end is no different. 5. It's not just one ending tweaked 3 times. There are some who, among other exhibits against the endings, have pointed out an alleged plot hole concerning what happens to the mass relays, and thus the future of travel across the galaxy. People quite correctly notice that the relays explode during the final event as each one spreads a pulse of whatever colour your Shepard chooses across the galaxy. However, some jump to the conclusion that this means they're destroyed, and therefore, what the hell? All those squadrons from all over the galaxy are marooned in space, doomed to float until they die. It is not a happy ending. But, okay, so it's not going to be an easy 2 months, but in all 3 endings, the implication is that the mass relays will be restored. In the red ending, it said that the relays were badly damaged, so as the least hopeful ending, there's still hope. In the other 2, the galaxy now has access to Reaper/Prothean technology, and the entire theme is limitless potential and bright futures. It is safe to assume they fixed those bad boys up in the epilogue. Nobody told BioWare that some people need absolutely every detail spelled out. Sorry critics, no plot hole. Mic drop. 4. It wasn't about main character epilogues. Many complain that after a whole game of character development, or 3 really, the endings told us nothing about what happened to them when the war ended. After all, what's the point of getting invested in the characters if we don't know how it all worked out for them? But at the end of the day, what we're really invested in is the fate of the galaxy, which is why the epilogue is that much more macroscopic. The only individual who really needed a personal ending was Shepard, and we know what her fate was. Say you're watching some sci-fi movie. Most of the time, the ending goes something like this. The world is safe, things can go back to normal, and now, here's what happens next to the characters. We're so used to that format that when an ending comes along like, the world is completely changed and here's what happens to the world, it feels like something's missing. Nobody is saying it wouldn't have been a really nice cherry on top to see Garrus opening a thriving rent-a-car business on Palaven or Tali partying hard, but it doesn't diminish the fact that they answered the most important question. What happens to everybody? The whole point is that the future isn't set. Their fates are so open-ended that going into them might actually be a step backwards. 3. All the options are well fleshed out. There have been many comments made that the endings are too perfect and all-encompassing to be reduced to a round of pick a door. After all the fighting, politicking, and exploring, you more or less went from crisis to unmitigated victory in one button press. Deus Ex Martini or something. However, each one of them is a given plausible explanation as to why exactly the bad guys just put God's remote control in your bony human hands. Sure, one may be weaker than the others, but it still does its job of writing out the Reapers in a logical way. But what about my heroic conquest? Why is it all talk now? What is this? Kill Bill? Actually, you were so much of a bloody hero that you made the Reapers throw out the old playbook, and now you're discussing new plays for a future of organic life. Just saying it feels grandiose. It's also interesting that the obvious choice, namely the red ending, which up until then was the ending we all thought we were building up to, ends up being the least happy option on the list. Whichever way you go, the whole setup is far more grounded in the story than many will give it credit for. 2. The Defiance ending is basically an Easter egg. The hidden 4th ending is a pretty smooth touch as well. As most games would, the original release of Mass Effect 3 was programmed to just wait until you triggered one of the stated options, allowing you to empty your gun at the catalyst with no reaction. Nobody really quipped about it. It's one of those minor reality breaks that just blends into the background of the experience. In fact, at a point like this one, most gamers think nothing of shooting at an NPC like it's part of the scenery before proceeding. Others will be half testing if it actually does something and, well, surprise! It also takes advantage of a player's habits with conversation. For those who play for Renegade, their stubborn dialogue choices might unintentionally go too far, rather than arriving at some persuasion sentence to talk yourself into a more perfect ending. So be it, punchy folk, look what you've done. Craftier still, after getting the bleakest conclusion possible, you still learn that the next Reaper War would be won thanks to your advances. A sad ending with a happy ending. It makes it okay for those gamers who fired one shot at the catalyst either by accident or out of habit, only to briefly be treated to an elaborate "you fucked up" sequence. 1. The synthesis ending is ridiculously feel-good. The green ending is just about the happiest ending you could dream of. Seriously, who could have thought that at the beginning of Mass Effect 2 that it would all end on such a wildly optimistic note? The war's over, and not only are the bad guys our new BFFs, but everybody in the galaxy could be on the way to total enlightenment and even immortality. The whole thing is bursting with uplifting imagery that tugs at the soul, albeit with the subtlety of a jackhammer. The moment the Husk's eyes light up with sympathy, the Geth chatting it up with the unmasked Quarian, new advances are now making absolutely everything better than it's ever been. All thanks to the magic of coming together for a better tomorrow. Like, really, really together. And by ending hate, we're actually going to kill death itself. That's just nice, isn't it? Finally, although this is mentioned nowhere in-game, the whole thing implies that Joker is finally going to be able to make a flesh and blood woman out of Edie, which is what we all wanted. We really did. If you're grouchy enough to watch this ending and leave unhappy, then this begs the question. When you go out to boo Christmas plays, do you throw eggs or tomatoes? What do you think about it though? Please don't slate me too hard. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As usual, I've been Ash, this has been WhatCulture Gaming, and I'll see you again soon. Hopefully, if it doesn't get me fired. Thanks for watching.